still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.
Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis. I'm excited to be joined by my co-host, Leigh Bush. She is an actress and she's also served as a host. Leigh, tell us a little bit about some of the projects and things you've done.
Well, hi, welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Moshe. I'm really excited to be here with you too and all the guests that we're going to get to talk to today. I have had the very pleasure and privilege of being in some exciting projects, mostly TV. I did start as a model in New York with Ford and Wilhelmina for many years, and then advanced into doing theater and moved to LA to pursue my film and TV dreams, which are still coming to fruition, so I'm enjoying that journey. But I've been in Blackish, lots of other TV shows, Grey's Anatomy, to name two, so I'll leave it there.
Sure, that sounds great. And I'm from New York, so I love the fire, the passion, the fashion, and also certainly
never
film.
give up,
Sure.
Never give up.
Exactly, certainly. And then Music and Medicine, it's a show obviously that sort of talks about some of the health issues that are faced by our artists and musicians, and we think it's a catalyst for discussion for the community's health at all. What's your background and familiarity with health as relates to some issues that maybe you know about or may have encountered?
Great question. I'll just say how I was inspired to participate in your project, Music and Medicine. Great title, and I thought, okay, that's pretty catchy. What's going on there? But anything that has to do with music, I mean, I'm an artist, so anything that has to do with creativity, I am interested in. And then medicine, I thought, okay, that's an interesting combination. But medicine is important to me, obviously, as a mom and as a woman, making sure that I'm healthy and that my daughter has been raised with healthy habits. But my dad was a PA, a physician's assistant, and so that was something that the conversations around our dinner table at night were about the cases he was working on, the patients he was dealing with, and he had such a passion and commitment to being of service, and that really resonated with me, and I've been able to raise my daughter with those same values and contribute to the community in different community service endeavors that I've been involved in. And it always makes me laugh when I think about it. One of the things that he did to try to encourage me to become a doctor was he had me watch him perform a surgery on one of his patients' knees. He used to do a lot of workers' comp cases, and somebody had come into the clinic that night. Yes, I happened to be there with him one night after school. He would pick me up sometimes and I'd go hang out with him at work and do my homework at the clinic. And someone came in through the ambulance with his leg almost just kind of knee was hanging out. And I'm just like, oh. And he said, Mary Alice, come in here and work, watch me, you know. That's my first name, Mary Alice. And I said, no, I kept resisting. He said, no, sit down, it's okay. And I watched, and I 2-3 seconds, and I just bolted out of there.
This won't be a field I'm going
I know. I said, no, Dad, I don't think I'm going to be a doctor. But I was so inspired by his passion to be of service and his talent, and he was highly respected in his field, so definitely an inspiration there.
Right, and I should say that was at a time where physician assistants weren't as well known, what they do, and even today. So I should just clarify that while they're physician assistants, they are capable of running clinics or doing surgery. They have a lot of hands-on training, 2 years in medical school, and that's amazing. And like you said, he wound up being a pillar of the community at a time where this was the 70s?
Yes.
A lot of people may not have known who that is.
Exactly, or known about that as a field, sure.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we definitely look forward to learning more about you as we get to work together, and I can't wait to interview our first guest.
Me too.
Sure. Thanks so much. Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis. I'm excited to be joined today by two amazing people. My co-host, Leigh Bush over here, and E.D.I. This is an amazing interview because we are so excited to be able to have the chance to sort of really talk about some of the medical issues that can come out not only through music, but just through one's experience. And just turning to you, E.D., just to start, I want to kind of roll back the clock. As I had mentioned to you, I'm from the East Coast. And so tell me about where you were born, growing up, and just that whole New Jersey experience.
Well, I grew up in actually New York City, Brooklyn, New York. And so that's where everything started for me at. And I moved around a lot as I started to mature and grow up and live in different cities and different states, but everything started in New York City.
Exactly. And then in terms of really starting to form that first group, how early and how soon were you sitting and saying music is going to be my passion and I'm going to really start seeing if I can put together a sound and be an artist?
Yeah, I got lucky, man. It happened pretty early on. I knew what I wanted to do. I was pretty clear about it. You know, my mom always talks about that. She always says you knew what you wanted to do, and I was fortunate enough for it to, you know, work out.
E.D., what was the name of your first group? And how old were you when you
Well, I
formed your
started
first
off
group?
just by myself, you know what I mean?
Oh,
It
really?
was just me and a dream, and then I had many different groups, you know what I mean? But professionally, we started as Dramacidal in 1995. Dramacidal.
Oh, right, okay. Dramacidal in 95, okay. But you said you had many groups before that and you started young. How young were you when you first started?
I think I wrote my first little rap at about 8 or 9 years old,
I was
something
thinking
like
that,
that. Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. So it was destined.
That's what it seems like, man. You know, I'm not complaining at all. I'm very thankful.
What about influences? Who were some of the artists or some of the music that influenced you to not only be passionate about it, but to even pursue the career?
Yeah, well, my mom was a real big music lover, man. So whatever she was playing was my early influences. You know, all the greats from Marvin to Al to Michael, you know, Luther, and those were the early influences as far as just loving music and loving the emotion that music can convey to you. And then, of course, hip hop was all around me in Brooklyn, New York. You know, great rappers from Rakim to Big Daddy Kane to KRS-One, all of those, Run DMC, all of those guys were heavy influences on me.
So you're starting to write. You're still very, very young, and then even thinking about groups and things like that, what are some of the things you feel, I need to try to get this into that sound, whether it's an experience or things that you felt passionately about, or maybe even a girl that you were interested in?
I mean, early on in hip hop, it was just about being the best and bragging and, you know, talking about yourself a lot. And of course, I did a lot of that in my early music. It was actually Tupac who showed me that you can actually talk about your life and your experiences in your music, because up until that point, I didn't really, you know, see any other artists really doing that much.
So you had some peers that were giving you a little competition, kind of raising the bar for you, even young, who you're kind of hanging out with and writing music with. And,
yeah,
okay.
Somewhat. I was usually the best around.
Oh, really? I knew that was coming.
I was usually the best around.
So on that modest note, how did this sort of evolve into saying, okay, I might let so-and-so be with me, whether it's, I know, some people were relatives or friends of friends or, you know, somebody's godson, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, we just, like, the early formation of the Outlawz, we were all connected in some kind of way, you know, whether through family, friends, parents, whatever. So we were all connected in some kind of way, and, you know, all just had a similar dream and a similar passion, and it just kind of worked out the way it was. We weren't put together like a boy band, but we kind of all knew each other, and then started to form around 95, 96.
I was listening to, and I know this is jumping ahead a little bit, but it's still relevant. I was listening to your song, Talk About It. And I'm not gonna try to front. I am not the most knowledgeable about rap at all, but I'm here to learn as well, and get to know you better and enjoy this experience and sharing with the community, right?
Right on.
I am always moved by the music. And that music and that song, it could just be an instrumental for me to play all day. And then your lyrics and the message you were sending just was icing on the cake. Where do you get your inspiration for the sound from? 'Cause that's what really
the inspiration for that particular song came when I heard the track produced by a great up-and-coming producer by the name of Cali Belly. And when he sent it to me and I heard what was saying during the chorus, it just spoke to me, and it allowed me to open up and talk about some things that I haven't talked about musically before.
Yeah, I was really, really moved by that. And then for you to have Miss Maya Angelou, you know, set it off, it was...
I had to do it, man. Rest in peace to the great Maya Angelou. And the poem she delivers, you know, that I placed before that song is just very poignant. You know what I mean? It just speaks to you on so many different levels. Well, at least it spoke to me on a lot of different levels. And I thought it was a great way to start the project off. You know
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. When you heard the sound from your friend, how did you immediately think of Maya as as being, you know, a contributor to that?
Well, no, because that particular instrumental just starts off with a long intro of him just playing the chords, you know, and they're very pretty. And I said that I got to put something there, you know what I mean? It can't
Right.
just be left empty like that.
Yes.
And so I've always been a big fan of poetry, and of course Maya Angelou. You know, hip hop and the blues, they share, you know, common elements as far as being able to just talk really open and blatantly about what you're going through, you know, the woman that don't love you no more, the fact that you don't got no money and you sitting in a bar drinking. Like hip hop and blues are very similar. So it was easy for me to make the connection. You know, I just love Maya Angelou's voice, you know, tone wise, it just, you know what I mean? I just love to hear her talk. She can read the phone book
Right.
for me.
Because
And
it's
I can,
melodic, right?
Yeah,
So melodic,
yeah,
it fits. It's
yeah.
music
And her voice is
itself.
very unique. She's
Yes.
very unique, you know what I mean? For a woman that has, you know, depth and
Yeah.
soul.
Yeah, her voice is an instrument in and of itself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that raises this element. Do you feel like the words kind of come first and you're thinking of stuff and really want to get a message out and then, or is it, I've got some music that is in my head or I come across or I get somebody bringing me great beats and then I really marry the two together?
Yeah, earlier in my career was words first, and then I would just match the words to whatever beat I had available. But, you know, later on in my career, I really just kind of, you know, let the music and let the song write itself. It kind of, you know what I mean? I know it sounds weird, but the song kind of writes itself when the music is there and you're inspired.
And what does inspire you?
Life experience.
Well,
I mean, yeah.
Actually, let's take it back a little bit. As a child, you have different inspirations, and then you grow and mature, and then you get different inspirations. So what changes have you seen throughout your life and your music career from things that inspired you when you were younger, when you first started, and up to now?
Yeah, I think when you're a young artist, for the most part, you emulate. You know what I mean? You try to, you know, mimic, you know, I heard Michael Jackson talk about James Brown and how much of an influence James was on Michael. And then eventually Michael developed his own, you know, style and, you know, singing style and dancing style, and eventually became his own. And it was the same for me. You know, I was just listening to KRS-One and Run DMC and just, you know, trying to do my best rendition of them until I actually became what I consider an artist, you know, where you have your own sound and you're bringing your own message and telling your own story.
And did that moment hit, or was it because of a song doing very well or someone saying something like, I think you've got something that's different and don't think it's average, you're unique now?
Yeah, I don't know when it happened. I understand what you're talking about. I know that it did happen. I don't know when it happened. I just really have a passion for music, and I just love it. And I never wanted to, you know, I never wanted to be, you know, categorized or, you know, in anybody's shadow or, you know, stealing anybody's style. You know, hip hop, that's a no-no.
Right.
You gotta be unique. Well, it used to be a no-no. It's not so much anymore, but, you know, back in my day, like the old people say, back in my day, you had to be unique. You had to, you know, you had to have your own.
You had to come correct. Yeah.
Absolutely. You couldn't sound like everybody else. And so I've always prided myself on, you know, being as unique as possible.
Let's delve into some of those kind of transitions, because I think this is something, and you hinted at it with the blues. As artists sort of come up and listen to different music, something that they heard back then, they consider to be old. And they need to come up with something new. And it seems to constantly be the clash, like, oh, well, we listen to jazz and blues now. We're not gonna listen to hip hop. But you drew this interesting parallel saying that they're basically shades of essentially the same coin.
Yeah.
To what extent do you feel like I really have lived that and seen that?
Man, well, you know, I'm 46 years old, so I've lived a life, a full life, and all the experiences that, you know, most of us as adults have experienced, I've experienced. And because I'm an artist, you know, I don't know how to do anything other than talk about my life and my experiences and my music. You know, I'm not that creative to, you know, come up with some great story that'll wow you, you know what I mean? I'm gonna just talk about my life, and hopefully you can identify with what I'm talking about in the music.
There was an artist, I can't remember who it was, you guys might know, and I'm sure it's relative to any artist really. As you mature in life, and as long as you live, you keep interpreting what's going on in your life, and it is reflected in your music or in your art. That's genuinely what you're saying.
Absolutely,
right?
100%. Yeah, just taking, you know, and if you're looking for inspiration, life is always giving you something. Like I said, never ending pool of inspiration. You talk about living a life, and
just look
you're
around.
an artist. Yeah, so I've never experienced writer's block. You know what I mean? I don't know anything about that because I'm just gonna, you know, I might talk about my day, or, you know, a relationship, you know, children, parents, everything. It's just always something to talk about.
Well, that's a gift, and that's a really enlightening way to refer to it, that you don't have writer's block, because of course you know some people do struggle with that. So
yeah, I've heard of that. You know,
Right.
I've heard of that
I just
before.
can't relate.
Yeah.
Talk to us about sort of how the group, though, did start to become a little bit more formal and start to filter in members because of either a role they could play or add, because like you said, you kind of felt like you could carry it yourself, but over time it's definitely evolved. Tell us about some of those changes and some of the people that came in, why, and or, you know, how they either helped, you know, the group or added something that wasn't there.
Yeah, Pac had this, you know, idea about putting together a super group. You know, when he was incarcerated in 1995, he wanted to, you know, when he eventually got out of jail, he wanted to come back to hip hop, to the music industry with a super group, so to speak, of just super talented lyricists and, you know, guys that all had their own unique style and could appeal to different regions all over the country and not just East Coast or West Coast. And,
are you talking about One Nation?
No, that was a
later.
completely separate project. But as far as the group, the Outlawz, that came together that way with his idea. And then Gaddafi, rest in peace, Yafel Fula, he grew up with a few talented rappers from Jersey, and you know, he started saying, well, you know, he's good, Pac, you should check him out, you should check him out. And slowly but surely, you know, Pac just started to handpick who we wanted, and you know, we kind of already knew each other, so it made sense. It wasn't, you know, like, I don't know, who's that? You know, everybody kind of knew each other. And so it just, you know, from that point on, it was the Outlaw Immortals, and we made our debut on All Eyes on Me.
How did that come together in terms of, you said different people had different talents, but were you still, I'm pretty much writing and I'm performing with this one person, or I've got 2 or 3 people that also help me write and this person does the music? How exactly in terms of that group really beginning to gel, despite the fact, like you said, but as you know, it's kind of like a team, right? When it comes to sports, you've got sometimes several superstars and it's hard to get them in a room. Some groups have imploded because there's almost too much talent to be contained. Conversely, sometimes one person's like, hey, I am it, and that can present its own challenge where it's like, okay, we can't try to, you know, how did you guys sort of really filter in people, kind of figure out roles, or could everybody write something that could be a hit and then everybody could accept that and give them credit?
Yeah, we were all writers in our own right. Everybody wrote their own stuff. Nobody, you know, nobody needed any help in that department. But at the same time, we were all very new and very green as far as the recording process and making actual songs. And you know, this time period was just really learning from someone who was at the top of their game. You know, 94, 95, 96, Tupac was at his apex. You know, he would be able to go in the studio and just create and make something out of nothing very easily. And you know, we all took pleasure and made sure we, you know, watched and learned, because we understood what, you know, you understand when you're watching greatness. It's not hard to see. So we were at school. We were at school most of the time. You know what I mean? Literally.
So let's take that back. That's interesting, because you're talking about how easy it is to identify that when it's in front of you, greatness. You met Tupac when you were how old?
I don't even remember. My mom, his aunt, my dad, they were all friends. They were all hanging out, buddies in the 70s, and you know,
But as children, right?
As children, yeah. Actually, my mom and his mom, he was born before me, so you know, he was here first, and then I came along.
But as you two came together as kids with the music and the groups, do you feel like, you know, even as a child, you were able to identify something different and unique in him that could
for sure.
be a foreshadowing of what's to come?
Absolutely. You know, like myself, Tupac was very clear early on what he wanted to do. He knew he wanted to rap. He knew he wanted to act. He wanted to be in entertainment. And so, you know, he began to, you know, portray that and act that out at a very early age. And, you know, it was very clear where he was heading.
Did you sense that the writing style, probably more than anything, because everybody knows about him, knows he was always writing and things of that nature, really was sort of a tremendous asset in terms of trying to come up? Or no, definitely we can take those and we can also take some of the songs and beats that he's coming up with? How do you feel that marriage sort of fit together, so to speak?
You know, Pac was just a bundle of creative energy all the time. He was always creating in creative mode. You know, he never really turned it off. And so, you know, for us, it was just about getting in where we fit in, so to speak, you know, and trusting his leadership in that department. And it wasn't really hard to do because, like I said, we trusted him and we knew that, you know, he was special.
Sometimes, and this has come up a lot, I know in the past, this whole, if one emulates a really complicated, dangerous lifestyle, it can literally have art imitate life. Did you sense that, hey, we're just young, we're just out here, this is real, this is the streets, this is what we do, we gotta get up and things like that to keep ourselves safe? Or was there much more of a, hey, this is just something that's going on coincidentally and we're just kind of, you know, historians of these facts?
You know, like when you think about that time period, it kind of seems, you know, irrelevant nowadays, you know, 20 plus years removed, but at that time there was no precedent for an artist or artists, you know, in the hip hop industry coming from the streets, coming from single parent homes, coming from poverty, drug abuse, the whole spectrum, and then all of a sudden being thrust into the limelight, into the music industry, you know, lots of money at your disposal, lots of yes men and yes women, and all the trappings that come along with the, you know, the rock star lifestyle. It really wasn't no precedent at that point. And so there was, you know, just kind of, you know, kind of feeling our way around and making mistakes as we go along and not being afraid to make mistakes. And, you know, obviously there were mistakes that were made, you know, and you know, it's just, like I said, it's just really, I'm thankful for the artists nowadays. They can go back and look at our mistakes and learn from it and, you know, hopefully avoid some of the, you know, stuff we had to endure, whether it was self-inflicted or not.
So do you see yourself as someone who can contribute to promoting that message, to do better, perhaps?
Yeah, well, I mentor different artists. I manage, I consult, and that I can deal with them on a one-on-one basis. And really the way I do it is just kind of just tell them stories and give them, you know, a little insight on some of our experiences, and then they can take it and do with it, you know, what they feel like they need to.
Right, because really when we're trying to impart any wisdom to anyone, we can only tell them from our experiences, right?
Period.
And then hopefully they, you know, might make a choice to do better.
So it's a good transition into some of the medicine things. What are some of those key learnings that you feel, okay, just for me, here's something I feel I've learned or I've changed my outlook on things because now I am a little bit older and I have a little bit more experience and I've been in the game over 20 years. Mm-hmm.
Really, you know, the music industry doesn't promote a healthy lifestyle at all. You know, it's late nights, it's eating late, smoking weed and drinking and, you know, the whole thing. And so, you know, I was just talking about it with some friends the other day, like, I don't even remember eating salads. But now, like, a salad is my favorite thing to eat, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I can't not eat a salad, but like.
What vegetables did you get? The lettuce and tomato and the hamburger, right?
If that. Might take that off, like, get that out of here.
Too much color.
I don't want that on there. Yeah, you know, like, water and things, you know, just things like that. Like, it just wasn't really a big priority for us. So, you know, I've done a complete lifestyle change since back in those days, you know.
For example?
Well, for example, I don't eat at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you know what I mean? Like, if I haven't eaten by 7, 8 o'clock, then that's pretty much it, you know what I mean? And I do things so I'm not starving if I'm working late, you know. And if I choose to eat late, it's more of a healthy choice. I'm not gonna eat Taco Bell at 3, 4 in the morning, you know what I mean? I'm not eating fried chicken 2 and 3 times a week. Now fried chicken is something I have once in a blue moon, and it's like, oh wow, I missed this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so just those little changes, and of course I exercise every day, 6, 7 days out of the week. You know, almost a year ago to the date, I was about 285 pounds. I'm now 210, you know, and so I completely did a lifestyle change many, many years ago, but it just kind of started to click now. You know what I mean? With the.
And what was that inspiration? Because exactly, because we always talk about changing behavior, and sometimes it's an event, a family member that something happens to, somebody very close to us, but actually doing it's very hard. It
is very hard. For me, you know, maybe about 10 years ago, I was having a lot of pain in my feet. And so I went to my doctor. I was still living in Atlanta, Georgia. And I went to see what was going on. And he ran a bunch of tests for me. And then he came back in the room and he had a paper. He had paper about that. And it just had all of these different names and shit that I couldn't pronounce. And he said, Mr. Greenidge, I'm gonna talk to you really plain and simple right now, because I don't want you to misconstrue anything I'm about to say to you. You're pre-diabetic, you're pre-hypertension, you're pre-high blood pressure, you're
pre-everything.
Pre-everything. Right. You have two choices. I can start prescribing you all of this medicine. This is medicine. And this doctor was so, I don't even remember his name, but I want to thank him. He said, look, I want you to take the medicine, because if you take some of these medicines, I'm going to get a huge kickback. And I'm going to be able to go on vacation this summer.
Okay, so he's kind of threatening you.
Yeah, he was very direct and very frank.
Right.
Yeah, you know, like, keep doing what you're doing, and I'm going to get paid very well off of you, because you're going to have to take all of this medicine. He said, or you can, you know, make a decision to change your life right now, and you won't have to take any of it. But you have to start immediately, you know what I mean? Because there is no alternative for you, you know what I mean? And so that was an eye-opener, obviously. Scared me to death. Really didn't know what to do, you know what I mean? I tried to, you know, go to the gym, I would work out, but I would always seem to not be consistent, not be able to keep it going, you know, traveling. You start 2 weeks going straight, and then I have to go on tour for 2 or 3 weeks.
And those bad habits are still there. Yeah.
Bad habits are still there, you know what I mean? And
bad schedule.
And just to, you know, really fast forward everything, I realized that it's all mental. It's really, I had to get it up here first, then my body would follow suit. And so once I developed the mental fortitude to say, this is what I'm gonna do first every day. I don't care what else is going on in my life. This is happening first. I'm gonna get up, and I'm gonna take my ass to the gym for at least 2 hours, you know what I mean? And that started about late last year, and ironically, you know, the pandemic just cleared my schedule, cleared all our schedule, you know what I mean? Just completely cleared my schedule, and I didn't have anything else to do but focus on myself. And so now it's locked in. It's a lifestyle now. It's not something that if I go travel away for 3 weeks, I'm gonna fall off, because wherever I travel to now, they have to have a gym. Good. You know what I mean? Certain diet choices that I make, I'm not wavering off of those, you know what I mean? I'm gonna travel to get to the good food if I have to. Good. You know, I'm gonna pay more if I have to, you know what I mean? Because I understand nobody's gonna do it for me, I have to do it for myself.
And you're worth it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the key piece that you touched upon is the mindset shift. Mm-hmm. You had a mindset shift, like you said. I mean, the events had happened, you had a couple of few years of trying to make it work in the inconsistencies, but at some point it was like, I can do this. It's psychological, I'm gonna really shift. And I want to pay you a compliment, so it's going to not sound like a compliment initially, but then it really is. I did not recognize you when I met you, because I was expecting the person I saw in the videos who was like this.
Oh yeah, that's a hell of a compliment. Thank you.
So you're welcome. And I was like, he looks good. He's done something with his health.
Yeah.
And bravo to you.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And like Dr. Moshe said, you are worth it. And I'm so glad for you that you have made that mindset shift, because you probably added, I don't know, 20 years to your life. Who knows?
Yeah.
In addition to however many you were going to live. But
absolutely.
And you want quality years. Right, doctor?
Absolutely. Right.
That's
Which
a
will
fact.
bring the quantity, right?
It's a fact. It's about the quality of life, you know, because we could live a long time and we could suffer all the way, you know, all the way to the very end. And that's not what I'm, you know, that's not what I'm here for.
Sure. Well, we already had told you we were going to delve into the mental a little bit more, because it's something that's so easy to say. It has become a little bit cliche, and certainly it's complicated. you've seen a lot of things in your life, and certainly things have changed physically, and maybe they've changed mentally. But to the extent that you define that, what does that look like in terms of the way I see my community, my place in the community, the things I'm trying to communicate, and then also just being more at peace with some of the things that have happened?
For me, when I was a kid and I went to summer camp and I won the award for the most optimistic. You know what I mean? I've always been the glasses half full kind of person. And that never really changed no matter what I was going through. Now, I've been through some very, dark times, and, PTSD is a real thing that I don't think is discussed in our community, you know what I mean? I've seen several friends murdered in front of me, and of course I know there's trauma associated with that. Have I went and sat down with a therapist or, to discuss, that? No, I haven't. Is that something that I'm willing to do if I feel like, you know what, I can't get over this blockage right here? Absolutely, I would. Long time ago, if you'd have brought a therapist or, any kind of psycho, it's like, what is that? You know what I mean? But I completely see the benefit of it now, and just being able to talk to somebody and, let it out is definitely beneficial. And so, for me, just staying positive, keeping certain things in my life consistent, like exercise routine. I read a lot. I'm a reader, and so that helps. And I learned some different breathing tactics to help with anxiety. And all of those things help, man.
Do you think the anxiety was caused by a lot of the PTSD, the seeing people murdered in front of you, experiencing some of the dark times that you've referred to?
I'm sure.
And now you have again incorporated that in a healthy lifestyle to make sure you do things that, like, meditation, reading. I do. I've recently started meditating, and another thing that I tried off and on and never really could get too consistent with it, and now it's becoming more of a lifestyle too. I try to meditate every morning, before I get out to bed, and just, sit still in silence for 10 to 15 minutes. It's so
and I
healthy
see the benefits of, it is.
Yeah, it helps to relax the mind so much, and we love meditation. What are some of the ideas or concepts you'd love to give some of the young cats? Like you touch on so many things. The business side of it is not always so pretty. There's a lot of yes men, yes women, you were saying. Things can go wrong if you leave your community or start to have a whole bunch of money before maybe you know how to manage that. And then some other things that may go on. You may lose a family member, may lose somebody really close. What's some of the pearls that you think we could pass on to some of the young kids that you lived it? You can really say it from your story.
Again, a positive attitude first, keeping a positive attitude no matter what situation you're going through, and kind of looking at it from a lens of, well, this challenge is here to help me grow, as opposed to, why is this happening to me? Why are these people doing this to me? And placing yourself in a victim role. And so I would do that first for any young artist. And then also do your due diligence as far as your research. This is your craft, this is your passion, but it's also a business. As soon as you sell one record, you're a commodity, you're a product, and people are gonna look at you as such. And it's not personal. The sooner you look at it realistically and begin to research and begin to do your homework and understand what you're doing and what you're dealing with, the better off your career is going to be, because you won't be blindsided by certain things. You'll either see it coming, or you'll expect it, or you'll know how to deal with it when it comes. Even with the music industry, like I said before, there's books about the music industry, but it's not really something that can teach you how to navigate your way through. You have to be in it and experience it and go through everything that's gonna come your way to really understand the music industry. And hopefully, if you're lucky enough, you'll be in it 20, 30, 40 years, and you can look back and say, yeah, I made a bunch of mistakes. I signed some bad contracts, but I'm still here and I'm doing better, because that's gonna happen in the music industry. The alternative is very rare, that you get in the music industry and you don't have, the stereotypical experience. It really is, because it was designed a certain way many, many years ago. And it's changing, but it hasn't all the way changed.
But it sounds like you expect to be in the music industry for as long as you have breath. Do I Do I infer that correctly?
I'll be in the entertainment industry. You know, I love the entertainment industry and I love the business side of it. I'm getting more on the business side behind the camera, so to speak, more as I get older in my career. I still love to make music, but yeah, I'll be around for sure.
Any movies, any other projects in art?
Yeah, movies, acting, yeah, we'll be doing.
Anything you can talk about?
Not yet.
Okay.
it's still
Stay
pending,
tuned.
but
we will stay tuned.
I'll say this, part of the reason why I'm going so hard in the gym is because I want that action star role. I'm coming for Denzel spots.
Yes.
Yeah, you know. So yeah, I don't, you know, one of my heroes is Marla Gibbs, and you know, her career started in her 40s as far as an actress, and you know, she always, I've had the experience to be around her. Shout out to her daughter Angela, who's a good friend of mine, and she always says it's never too late.
Yeah, that's what I was just telling the crew earlier. Never give up.
Being misunderstood, what do you think is a message that needs to be communicated, be it about the group, some of the experiences, or the way you've evolved into being much more, you know, in depth about your health and your mental wellness?
Yeah, I mean, for our core fans, they know the Outlawz has always been about, you know, positivity, you know, picking yourself up by your bootstraps, doing for yourself, and then you can help others. And we've always implemented that message in our music in some kind of way, and we'll, you know, continue to do that. And that's just, you know, that's just our way of giving back. We feel like we want to offer you something amongst everything else. We're going to entertain you, but we want to inspire as well.
That's wonderful. I know you talked about earlier how COVID kind of shut down opportunities for you to do things, and so that gave you an opportunity to focus on your health, right? Mm-hmm. Has COVID inspired you in any other way? Have you seen anything during this time with our social justice mission that has been reactivated with the advent of George Floyd, et cetera?
COVID itself inspired me in a way to just kind of not, you know, take the days for granted. You know what I mean? Because it's life is fragile. Life is very fragile. So at any moment, you know, something could come along and just wipe out thousands of people. You gotta, you know, be aware of that. And so that inspired me to make sure I was in the best health that I can be, because one of the things they said early on, that COVID was hurting those and really hurting those that weren't in the best health. And so, yeah, it inspired me to, you know, make sure I'm not one of those. And, you know, if I do come in contact with it, my immune system and my body can handle it and fight it, and, you know, I can move on.
And then with our social justice movement that's been reinvigorated with yet another senseless killing of unarmed Black people, how has that inspired you at all?
Well, it inspired me, of course, creatively. You know, I have some music where I'm speaking about it, and that'll be coming out soon on actually the One Nation Project. We are putting out the One Nation Project, and we talk a lot about what's going on in the world and in the community, and as far as the ongoing battle that we as you know, Black people continue to fight in this country. You know what I mean? It's ongoing.
So you have something in the works right now that that's been inspired by the current conditions.
Yeah, we do.
Who are you?
The whole project is kind of inspired by, you know, what's going on in the world.
Can you name
right
some
now.
of the artists that you're collaborating with on that?
We do. I'll tell you about the first single. The first single is a song called One Nation, and it features Exhibit. And it's just, it's a triumphant kind of song. It's like we've been through a whole lot, but we're still here.
Still standing.
Yeah, we're still standing. Yeah.
Right, which is our whole theme song as a people, isn't it? That no matter what, we're still gonna rise.
If we can't do nothing else, we can endure. Right. We know how to endure.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, this has definitely been a pleasure, and I feel like you've really been able to develop some insight and give us some as well, sort of behind some of the mystique and things like that. Cool. And the fact that you felt comfortable to bring up a topic like PTSD in particular, I mean, that is something, and I should unpack that. So post-traumatic stress disorder is something that certainly can affect many people in situations of violence, rape, killing, things of that nature. And it's something that we shouldn't be afraid of as a community to get the help if we need, and also try to work through, because there is a process, there's therapy available for it. There are professionals, and so So we're going to run that number for those that may know someone who's experienced it or may be too scared to discuss it, so that you can get the help that you need. But thank you so much.
No, pleasure was all
being
mine.
willing.
Great talking to you guys.
Sure.
Thank you, E.D. Such a pleasure to meet you and talk with you, learn more about you.
Thank you.
Thanks.